Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to make some Christmas cake bars or squares. So this is going to be a, a, a fairly thin layer of Christmas cake, maybe 1.5 to 2 inches deep Christmas cake in a square cake tin, which I'm then going to cover with some marzipan and some fondant icing, and then I'm going to cut it into some bars or some squares, and you can do it however you want, basically bars or squares or any shape you want. So I'm doing this because I think it's ideal. It's an ideal way of serving if you're having a get together of some sort, and you can serve little portions of the cake rather than a full size Christmas cake that you cut into slices and things like that. It's not a tricky recipe. It does take a bit of time because you have to bake the cake for a reasonable amount of time. And then you have to let it cool down before you can put the marzipan on and the icing on. So I start off by preheating my oven to 160 degrees Celsius, 140 Celsius with a fan, which is 320 Fahrenheit. And I have greased and lined my 8-inch fairly shallow tin, 8-inch square, and that should be deep enough for this cake. If you have a deeper cake tin, that will work well. Just grease it and line it, and when the cake is baked and cooled for a little while, you can lift it out. So I'll go on to the ingredients. I have 118 grams, which is 2/3 of a cup, plus 2 tablespoons, based on scooping packed flour into a 250 milliliter cup of plain flour. I have 113 grams, which is half a cup of softened unsalted butter, 113 grams, half a cup plus 1 tablespoon of light brown sugar. You could use caster sugar, you could use dark brown sugar, it's up to you. I have 400 grams, which is 2 2/3 cups of mixed dried fruit, and I've made up my own mixed dried fruit, a combination of sultanas, currants, raisins, and my homemade chopped mixed peel. But it's more heavily on the raisins, sultanas and currants and just a little bit of the chopped peel. Then I have 50 grams, 1/3 of a cup of chopped dried apricots. So I chopped the dried apricots quite finely and weighed out 50 grams, which is 1/3 of a cup. I have 100 grams, half a cup of glassy cherries, which I have cut into 4 pieces each, basically quartered them. I have here 130 grams of egg. That works out at 2.5 medium eggs, which would be 2.5 large eggs in the USA. But if you don't have a scale so you can weigh, and you don't want to split the egg in half like that in case you get it wrong, it doesn't matter really. Sort of roughly that amount will work. But what you can do is have 2 medium eggs and 1 medium egg white, and the same 2 large eggs in the USA and 1 large egg white. Then I have 1 gram, half a teaspoon of mixed spice. Now you can use more if you want to. I don't want a particularly spiced cake, I just want a little hit of the spice. I have 30 millilitres, 2 tablespoons of brandy, and that's optional. You can use it or you don't have to use it. And I have some apricot jam here. Here I've got 20 grams, which is 1 tablespoon. I may need a little bit more because I'm going to heat that up so that I can brush it over the top of the cake for helping the marzipan to adhere to the top of the cake. So I'll do that, I'll heat it up before I need it. So that's all the ingredients, and except for 250 grams, 8¾ ounces of a golden marzipan or a yellow marzipan, and 350 grams, which is about 13 ounces of fondant icing. And you can vary those amounts as well. I want a thinner layer of marzipan than I have of icing. That's why I've differentiated the weights like that. But you can use how much or how little of each as you want, basically. So with that said, let's go on to make the cake batter. And as I start to make the cake batter, I'm just going to put my mixed spice into the flour and give that a little bit of a stir around. That gets that out of the way then. And at the same time, I'm going to put my apricots and my cherries into the mixed dried fruit, and I'm going to give those a bit of a stir around as well. They'll get stirred around and mixed in more when they go into the batter, but it's just to get them a little bit distributed. The cherries are very sticky, so we need to get those separated out. And that's good like that. So then I'm going to put my brown sugar and my butter into a large bowl, and I'm going to cream those together until they're nice and fluffy. And as ever, I'm going to do this with my hand mixer. You can do it in a stand mixer if you want to, or you can do it by hand. And that's good enough. So then I'm going to pour in my egg. I'm going to pour in one and whisk it into the butter and sugar, and then I'll do another one and the remainder. And with the eggs mixed into the butter and sugar, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my fruits into a larger bowl, and this is just for ease really. You could tip the flour and the fruits in to the batter and mix it, but I'm going to put the flour into the fruit, and I'm just going to give that a toss around before I add it into the batter. Like that, and then I'm going to tip that into the batter mixture, and I'll scrape down the bowl to make sure that I get all the flour in. And then I'm going to simply fold that until everything is combined. That looks good. So then I'm going to put that into my prepared pan. And with that in the pan, I'm going to spread it out to level it over the pan. And that's good like that. So that's ready to go into the oven. I'm going to put it into the oven and bake it for 60 to 75 minutes until it rises up a little bit and it cooks all the way through. If I poke a skewer into the centre, it should come out clean. And at that stage, I'll take it out of the oven and I'll come back then because I want to poke a few holes in the top and brush some brandy over it and let that seep in. Then I'll leave it in the tin for a while to cool before I transfer it to a wire rack so that it can cool completely. But I'll come back and show you that once the cake has baked. I baked my cake for exactly 30 minutes and I can see that it's baked up quite nicely, and a skewer in the centre comes out clean. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to poke some holes all over the surface, and as I mentioned, I think I'm going to brush some brandy on mine, but that's optional. You don't have to do that. You could, if you wanted to, brush a little bit of orange juice on it, or you can just leave it without brushing anything on it. So I've got 2 tablespoons, 30 millilitres of brandy, and I may not use all of it. I'm just going to brush over the surface and let that sink in. And that's good enough like that. So then I'm going to leave that in the tin for 20 minutes. Then I'll take it out of the tin and leave it to cool completely. And once it's cooled completely, I'll come back and we'll roll out the marzipan and put that on the top, and then roll out the fondant icing and put that on top of the marzipan, and that will then be almost ready to serve. So with my cake cooled down, I've put my marzipan onto a little bit of icing sugar. I'm using icing sugar rather than flour because that will meld nicely into the marzipan as I roll it out. And I'm going to roll this out quite thinly. I don't want a thick layer of marzipan, and it needs to be rolled out to a size that I can cut out an 8-inch square. And there I have my 8 inches, that's good. So I'll just take away the excess, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some apricot jam onto the cake, and I'm going to brush that over the cake. And then I need to put my marzipan on there, like that. And press that down, and then we need to do the same with our icing. So I've done the same with the icing in terms of putting some icing sugar on my board, and I'm going to roll this out slightly thicker, and cut that to 8 inches as well. And with that rolled out, I'll put my jam again on the marzipan, and I just spread a thin layer of that over again, and I'm using more than a tablespoon. I said a tablespoon in the recipe, but if you heat this up until it completely melts, a tablespoon might be enough, but I'm quite happy having a nice amount of apricot jam to act as my glue. And then I'm going to put the icing on in the same way. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to chill that for 10 minutes or so. I just want to firm up that marzipan and the icing, and then I'm going to cut it into some bars and some squares, and then I'll come back and show you the results and we'll have a taste. So I chilled my cake with the marzipan and the icing for 10 minutes. So I cut it into 8 1.5 inch by 3 inch bars and 7 2-inch squares. So I'll show you what they look like. And they've cut up quite nicely. And so I'll have a taste of one of the bars. Very, very good. Lovely and fruity, obviously, because it's got a lot of fruit in it. But it has a nice chew to it. And then you get the hit from the almond flavour of the marzipan, and then the sweetness of the icing as well. So I think this is a very good way of serving a type of Christmas cake, particularly, for instance, if you work somewhere where you have a celebration towards Christmas, you can make something like this and cut it into little squares or bars. Even just 1-inch squares would be a nice little bite for somebody. So that's going to be it for this recipe. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for the recipe, and I'll put a link below the video as well, and I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.